Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of Speaking Steagles, the premier Pennsylvania pro football podcast. I am Nick Vete. I'm joined, as always, by Ricardo Martinez-Paz, and we've got another episode of Steelers and Eagles football to talk to you guys. A lot going on. We've got the first week of preseason games that we can get excited for that is coming up. The Eagles are playing today, Ricardo. Eagles football is back. I imagine that you are very excited. How you feeling this morning?
Good, man. Although my hair is not exactly cooperating this morning, but other than that, I'm ready to talk football. Love that preseason's back. Football game back. So yeah, exciting
So
time.
how closely do you actually watch preseason football?
So in recent years, I feel like I've been watching a bit more in depth. Eagles games more specifically, but with other games, I'll just have them on the background. I'll watch every like bits of it. But yeah, I do always have the games on just because it's football.
So you're locked into the Eagles.
Yeah. I'm always paying attention to who's going to stand out. All that stuff.
Did you get the NFL Plus, that new thing that they're doing to get all of the preseason games?
That's a good question. I've been curious, maybe I've been considering it, but I don't think I'm going to do it yet, just to see how things go with that. But I don't know. Have you gotten that?
No, I'm holding off. That's the thing is preseason football. Yes, if you're watching specifically the Steelers or the Eagles, I'm gonna be dialed into it because I want to pay attention to it. But
Yeah.
I'm not paying the $5 a month just to see the preseason football. I can spend that $10 better somewhere else. Even though it's not a ton of money, it's not gonna break the bank.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it to me. So if I'm in the region or I just happen to get the Steelers or Eagles game on NFL Network, then I'll watch it. But I'm not going to go out of my way to pay to see it, which is kind of unfortunate because I do want to see it, but I'd rather just watch the highlights and I'll read up on how everybody did if I can't get the actual game.
Yeah. No,
all right, sounds good, dude. Other than that, I think we should dive right into maybe talking about this first Eagles preseason game. I think we'll start with their game first because they are playing first today, obviously, and the Steelers then play tomorrow. So Nick Sirianni said that the starters are getting 1 to 2 series, so we'll see Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, all the rest of the starters out there for a little bit of the game. But is there anything that you kind of have your eye on, or are there any topics related to this game you want to discuss first here?
Well, I think it's interesting because you put in the Google Doc, is this contradicting, his philosophy of preserving player health and stuff like that? So that's what I immediately went to when I first saw that. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. It kind of does contradict a little bit because, you never know what could happen. And, it might be at 2 series, 1-2 series, but still, it's I don't know. Preseason to me is more for those fringe players, players trying to make the roster. But then again, I feel the other side of it was okay, what's the benefit of playing your starters? I guess it gets some rust off, really. I guess see where they are physically and the chemistry the team has right now. I guess those are the only two things I'd see the benefits of the team. It's more of a measuring stick for the entire for all the starters, I guess. But with that being said, it I do think it does contradict a little bit of what you've been saying, especially with players like Cam Jurgens, who's now going to have to fill in for Jason Kelsey. Maybe because Kelsey will be out with that elbow injury until after week 1. So that's also I'd be curious as to how much Jurgens can play, because injuries could happen and we could be down 2 starters if something happens, or 2 centers, I should say. But it's definitely curious, definitely a topic that I'm not too sure about. Really, I'm kind of mixed about it.
I'm with you on the Sirianni thing. It's just so weird the way that he's gone about this, from initially saying okay, we're not doing any tackling, we're going to do everything we can to limit soft tissue injuries, and then they go through camp, everything kind of follows in that structure. I haven't really heard of any other team exclusively completely avoiding tackling altogether. And then now all of a sudden he's like, you know what, I'm still going to send my starters out there for 1 to 2 series. It is just a little strange to me because Granted, again, the Jets who they're going up against are probably going to send most of their starters out there for those 2 series early on, anyways. So
Yeah,
it's not like you're really running the risk of getting some fourth string safety that's coming up trying to make a big play on like AJ Brown or something
yeah,
to kind of get his name out there more and risk an injury in that sense. But still, I just don't know if it makes the most sense. But I guess hey, you are getting them out there. I'm really curious to see if there's a discrepancy in how sharp the Eagles are versus the Jets when it comes to tackling and the actual fundamental aspects of like in-game action because of the fact that the Eagles haven't been doing that. Which again, I don't think it's a big deal this early on, but even down the depth chart so much is even when we get to like the third quarter and you start to see some of those second and third string guys in there, like do you see there's a different level of sharpness among the Jets players versus the Eagles players in that sense? And for some of the individual matchups, I'm with you as well. I'm curious to see how Cam Jurgens and Jordan Davis both do. I think we'll be talking about them a little bit later to a certain extent at a different portion of this episode. But those are definitely two guys I'm excited to see in game action and see how they play.
yeah, absolutely. So much promise from the two rookies. So, I mean, yeah, like you said, we'll sort of touch on that a little bit more later on.
I know another aspect of this, and I guess this is, kind of getting more towards training camp, so I might save it a little bit, but like also if Hassan Reddick is out there for a little bit, like that's one of the biggest question marks that I kind of see remaining on this Eagles defense is how he's utilized because we've heard a lot that they're really playing him a lot at the Sam linebacker position and they're dropping him back into coverage, more than he has the last couple seasons when he's really been exclusively rushing the quarterback. So
Yeah,
in 1 to 2 series, we're not going to really be able to get a true feel for that. But
yeah,
if he's in there for 2 series as a starter, and you see him dropping back into coverage just as much as he is rushing the quarterback, I mean, I don't know how I would feel about that. So that's definitely something I'm kind of keeping my eye on to a certain extent. But again, it's going to be a small sample size one way or another.
right, right, absolutely. I mean, yeah, no, it's definitely. I would. I mean, I would be like really annoyed with that. I'd be like, no, that's not his strength. Like that's just, like obviously he rushes the quarterback. That's what he's best at doing. What he's been doing really well the last couple of seasons. So dropping him back in coverage, Nick Sirianni's like, oh yeah, he can do it or whatever. Like, no, shut up. He's
No,
like,
no,
sure,
that like
maybe
look
he's
why
versatile,
one
sure. I don't know.
One, he's not nearly as good in coverage as he is rushing the quarterback. Everybody knows that, and he's going to put up double
Yeah,
digit sacks if he's rushing the quarterback 90% of the
exactly.
time. And two, the opposing offense is thanking you for dropping him back into coverage because they know
Yeah,
that's one of the weaker parts of his game, and they don't have to worry about blocking him now. So
yeah,
I
that's
mean, yeah,
right.
for
Yeah.
Sirianni and more specifically Jonathan Gannon, you got to make sure that you're getting this guy rushing after the quarterback.
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't know
just
that.
worried about like whether or not Jonathan Gann can get the best out of all his players. Because if he's going to be doing
It's
this kind of
tough, especially when you talk about the edge rushers and guys, coming when you talk about Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham and Derek Barnett and now Hassan Reddick thrown in there, you got to get all these guys the opportunity to rush the quarterback. That's a lot to be all on the field at the same time or to be rotating the snaps in there and get all these guys their opportunities to get to the QB.
yeah, definitely. I mean, that's something he's going to have to figure out sooner or later, sooner rather than later, really.
Yeah, 100%. So, real quick, we could talk about the Steelers game. They are playing the Seahawks tomorrow. Obviously, the main thing everybody's looking at is going to be how the quarterbacks play because that's been the biggest question mark. Mitch Trubisky is going to be in there for the first quarter. It sounds like Rudolph will be in there for quarters 2 through 3, and Kenny Pickett will be in there for the fourth quarter. Some variation of that. You're not sure exactly what the exact time frame is going to be like that. If Tomlin wants to see an extra drive out of a guy or something like that, or we see an opportunity for a 2 minute drill or something. So we will see how all that plays out. But that's clearly going to be the clear focus of this. And so far through training camp, we've seen Mitch Trubisky really get all the first team reps, even though he's had a little bit of an up and down camp. And I'm curious to see how Mason Rudolph does in game action, even though I still don't think there's really a path for him to be the starter. And then obviously everybody's going to want to see Kenny Pickett, the first round draft pick, who I really don't see any situation where he starts, given the way he's kind of played up and down throughout camp. And I still think he's got some development to do. But hey, I guess you never know how he does in the preseason games. But it seems like the Steelers are really intent on having Trubisky be the starter week 1. So this kind of preseason game is going to be the time to see what all these guys are capable of, and who's really going to be performing the best here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in terms of quarterback situation, I feel like this year specifically is very different from other years because Roethlisberger was at the helm before he retired, and so there wasn't really ever this quarterback battle for QB1 for starter. Um, so I mean, I feel like this is a bit of a different territory for Tomlin. So I'm curious to see how he just like handles it all, like sort of how you touched on. Um, it's going to be really really interesting. Obviously, the biggest thing heading into the regular season. Yeah,
And one thing I kind of like about it too is the fact that we're going to see all three of these quarterbacks probably in all the preseason games, unless they name Trubisky the starter after like the second one, and they're like, all right, we're just not going to send him out there for week 3 of the preseason or something like that. Um, so it is a very curious situation because in the past you have Ben Roethlisberger maybe playing one preseason game for maybe a quarter, and that was really all you'd get. And then outside of that, it was more of just the backups. I like this. They're going to send these guys out there. They're going to send out a lot of their starters, and I think that we're really going to see, um, how this goes over the course of the preseason and into the season. Is there a different level to kind of how ready the Steelers are in week 1 compared to the Eagles, who are going more of the protect your players, don't send them out there? From what I've read, it sounds like, outside of this game for the 1-2 series, and then obviously the 2 joint practices they have coming up, that's going to be all the real game like action for the starters. It doesn't sound like they're really going to play at all in game 2 or 3 of the preseason. So I'm curious to see kind of how that dynamic shifts between the 2 teams going into the regular season week 1.
yeah, definitely. Oh man, that's going to be interesting because it's like two very different.
Because we're really getting both sides of the card. We're getting
Yeah,
both sides of the card
exactly.
over how this is going to play out into the regular season.
Yeah, I hope for obviously for the Eagles that this isn't they're not like rusty going into the week 1, but you never know. I mean, we'll see really how
Yeah,
that.
just a few other things real quick. Real quick, one other thing I have on this preseason game for the Steelers. 2 other things. I'm really excited to see George Pickens and see what he
Yeah,
can do in a game action and a setting like that. I mean, he's been showing out in training camp, consistently making like big time plays in practice. So I'm excited to see if that translates over to the game field. And then another thing I'm excited to see is Jalen Warren, who came in undrafted free agent as a running back. I'm excited to see he's had a really good training camp. I'm curious to see if it can translate over into an actual game. Dale Lally, who covers the Steelers, excuse me, he said that Jalen Warren's got a legitimate chance to be running back too on this roster with Anthony McFarland and Benny Snell having up and down training camps, and Benny Snell just got hurt. He's been banged up a little bit, so I'm really curious to see if it is Jalen Warren being a legit option and out of the backfield, or if it's just something where, all right, I mean, he's looked good in practice, but it doesn't really translate over to games, and that's kind of just a flash in the pan. So those are 2 other things I'm keeping my eye on as we go forward here into this first game.
yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, it's preseason for a lot of players is a measuring stick. It's just like, yeah, will it translate? Will the training like strong training camps
It's the
translate?
measuring stick,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
So, just moving more into the actual training camp updates, is there any updates that you want to go over specifically with the Eagles? I wrote a couple down of stuff they got going on, but I know you touched on the Kelsey injury
Yeah.
that he's dealing with. Obviously, Jason Kelsey getting the elbow cleanup surgery. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that and any other Eagles training camp notes?
I mean, with regards to the Kelsey injury, I mean, he'll be fine. I mean, I'm not worried about it necessarily. I don't think, like, Jason Kelsey always plays through injuries. So, like, even if he's not fully recovered by week 1, I still think he's going to play. That dude is tough as nails. He's one of the toughest guys in the NFL, honestly. And so, forget the consecutive 122 consecutive starts or whatever it is. Like, that's just like, I mean, Kelsey will play through. It doesn't matter. He does. I don't think he cares about the starts necessarily. It's just that he wants to be on the field. That's what I think he really cares about, if anything. So that'll be very very interesting. I think he'll be fine by week 1. Cam Jurgens, I mean, obviously it's sort of affected him a bit. See how much he plays in preseason. Maybe he plays a majority of the snaps. Maybe he doesn't. But that's one like those two definitely like correlate. So we'll see how that works, especially tonight against the Jets for the Eagles. But with regards to other training camp notes, I mean, I find this really ironic because Sirianni has been saying, trying to keep players healthy, prevent injuries and stuff like that, or limit them at least. And then I just see this like laundry list of names on injury reports, like on who's limited, who's out, like Jordan Mailata and who is it? Andre Dillard, I believe, are limited after having a concussion. And so, it's really interesting. This sort of like, is this really working? Is my thing. Like, I just see all these names on the injury report, and then, um, yeah. So, ooh, my guy's gone.
All right, my fault on the technical difficulties aspect here, but yeah, that was brutal. So full disclosure, I just got a new laptop. Don't have it set up with any mic access or don't have any Bluetooth set up yet. That was planning on being my last stream with my old laptop, but I don't know. I guess it's given out on me, and it was just a brutal connection that whole time. So, oh well, I'm gonna just send this right now with the no mic. So hopefully this doesn't sound too bad on your end.
No, it sounds fine to me, actually. Yeah. So,
All right. Well, I guess we will adapt and overcome. So let's jump back into this. You were talking about Jason Kelsey and Cam Jurgens and all that good stuff. But what other updates were you filling us in before?
right.
Right
So,
before
yeah,
cut
I
out?
was just saying how like there was this sort of like, I just think it's ironic that Sirianni sort of has this like philosophy of preserving player like importance of player health, limiting those injuries and stuff like that. And yet I see a whole laundry list of players on the injury report, and I'm just like, really, is this really effective? Is it actually working? Um, so that's definitely one of my biggest question marks for like whether or not, yeah, it works and if it'll actually pay off. I don't know. At the moment, it doesn't seem like it will. Andre Dillard and um, Jordan Mailata limited with concussions, so like that, like, see, this is what I'm saying, which is like I don't really know if it works, but I'm always going to be skeptical about it. But then obviously we signed a running back, I believe 2 days ago. I'm blanking on his name at the moment, but I feel like that signing was more of like a depth thing, more for just a camp body. He's probably not going to make the roster. It's just because the Eagles,
Especially with Gainwell and Scott going down.
yeah,
More just to have another guy in the running back room.
yeah, exactly. That's just to fill those like the spots of those two who are injured who won't be playing today. So again, the injuries they're inevitable. They happen. So um, yeah, that signing was more just like, oh, input. But yeah, I don't really look into it that much.
Yeah, fair enough. There was one other thing. Um, the fact that Nick Sirianni was hyping up Lane Johnson and said he's the best right tackle in the world.
Oh
Yeah. I mean, did you like that? What were your thoughts about that? I personally was like, all right, like, it's cool. It's not like it's news or anything. Like, he is,
yeah, right.
without a doubt, one of the top, 5 to 3 best right tackles in the NFL. There's a few other guys that maybe come to mind, but outside of that, I mean, he's right up there. And he even said he feels like these next 2 seasons are really going to be his prime, given the strength that he's kind of put on.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because he's 30, I believe, 31. Um, so he's not getting any younger, obviously, and so at some point I feel like he's going to slow down, but I don't think this season's it necessarily. But he's definitely like him commenting that. I think just shows like how much respect he has, how much like he loves Lane Johnson. Um, so I mean, it's definitely like a good thing. Um, to like vocally support like a player or like praise a player. Um, it, whether or not that boosts Lane Johnson's confidence or not is, I mean, only he knows. But he knows, Lane Johnson knows he's been snubbed like from Pro Bowls and like All Pro nominations in the last couple seasons. So Lane Johnson knows he's one of the best in the league. So I mean, it's
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely. I mean, the one guy that came to mind, I was like, I could definitely see like in a season or two, if Tristan Wirfs continues to ascend at kind of the pace that he's going. I mean, he's already one of the top right tackles in the NFL, and
Absolutely.
he's only really kind of got the chance to keep going up. And the fact that I think he was a Pro Bowler last year, I want to say, in just his second season, so he's super talented. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at, I guess. And then I mean, I have a few notes on the Steelers as well on some of the stuff from their training camp. One of them was the fact that they waived Ulysses Gilbert, who was a former 6th-round inside linebacker. There's a ton of guys at the inside linebacker position for the Steelers team right now who have all really kind of been playing well. I'm going to talk about Devin Bush a little bit later, but there's a ton of depth here. So I mean, kind of to move him allows, I guess, Miles Jack, Devin Bush, Robert Spillane are all going to make the rosters. Most likely, Marcus Allen's going to make the roster. So it just kind of made sense to move on from him at this point. Someone is going to have to fill up his role on special teams, though, because he accounted for 337 special team snaps last year. I could see Marcus Allen taking on a bigger role there. He had 301 special team snaps. But, that's potentially an opportunity for Buddy Johnson or Mark Robinson, who were later round draft picks this past draft and then 2 drafts ago, to potentially take on a bigger role with the team and really lock in a roster spot if they can, be a force on the special teams. And then one other, I want to get your opinion on this, because one other note from training camp. So during a drill, Connor Hayward, younger brother of Cam Hayward, who was a tight end on the Steelers this year, he was talking during a drill, and he said, "Nobody wants to hit me," was what he yelled out during the drill. Minka Fitzpatrick yells over from the sideline, "Nobody's afraid to hit you. Trust me. I'm going to flip your ass next time." I love this. I love this interaction. I'm curious what your thoughts are when you hear that kind of competitive juice coming out of training camp.
Oh no, I love that. I literally love that, because it's just like, yeah, it shows how competitive both are. I mean, Connor Hayward, being the younger brother. I mean, I like the confidence though. I mean, that definitely is like a good thing. He's got confidence in him. And Minka commenting that just that kind of interaction, I feel like is one of those where you just like, it's kind of slept on. It's like, seeing that competitive side. Like, obviously, yeah, you're going to see them like flying all over the field, but when they're like chatting back and forth, that's something that I feel like goes under the radar a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely think that Hayward plays with a bit of a. I've said this and I've put this on the Instagram before. He definitely plays with a little flair to his game, and he's got that little bit of like spunk about himself that I like. I don't really see him making the roster because I think there's too many flaws in his game right now. I mean, he's decent at it in the receiving game, but he's not really a big time blocker, and he's kind of a tweener with his size and everything like that. But I think he's definitely primed for a practice squad spot, and I think that's good that he's going to kind of be staying within the Steelers organization. Hey, if they need to call him up from the practice squad because they have an injury or two at tight end, he'll be there. And I definitely think, keeping him there with his brother there is also a pretty cool story. So definitely someone who's let his name be known at training camp, even if he's not necessarily the most talented player out there.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. So that being said, we've got this other segment that Ricardo and I have been kind of thinking about and putting together. And I think it's time to jump right into it. But basically, we're halfway through training camp. We're about to start preseason games today with the Eagles, obviously. So through this point of training camp, we are going to give you a couple of our surprises from training camp and a couple of our disappointments from training camp when it comes to players. So I think the best way to do this is we'll go through. Let's do the disappointments first.
Yeah.
We'll do the disappointments for each team, and then we'll flip-flop and do the surprises for each team. So, I don't know. You want to go first, or should we go first with the Steelers? Either way.
Just going off last week, I think I went first with Jalen Hurts. So I started
quarterbacks. All right, I'll go first.
Yeah.
So my disappointments, it's actually been a pretty good camp for the Steelers. There's a couple guys lower down on the depth chart that I could nitpick, but I didn't really want to get into that. But overall, it's been pretty solid. But there were 2 guys who came in and I was kind of like, man, I was expecting more from you. I was expecting something different. So the first one I'll give you is a guy who's always been a favorite of mine. That's Devin Bush. All right. I mean, he hasn't necessarily been having a bad camp, so to say, but where the expectations were for me, he came back last year. He struggled during the regular season at times, and I was really hoping that he would be able to come back this season, really kind of ascend back to where he was his rookie level. I talked about this when we did our linebackers breakdown episode, and we just haven't seen him kind of reach that tier. We've seen Miles Jack look really good and fly sideline to sideline, cover, put his head in there and make a big tackle when he's got to get back into the backfield. And we just haven't seen that from Devin Bush, and now there's talk of potentially Robert Spillane having a better camp than him and potentially even taking that other inside linebacker starting spot from him. So not what I wanted to see from Devin Bush. And, really it's disappointing for a guy who looked so good as a rookie. The Steelers traded up in the draft to get him to the 10th overall pick in his draft class. And just hasn't been able to fully recover from that ACL injury and not picking up his 50-year option. I don't know. Things got to turn around quick for Devin Bush, and hopefully he can put it together in these preseason games because otherwise he's in jeopardy of being relegated to the bench. So not what you want to see. The other guy who's been a bit of a disappointment for me, and again, not necessarily a bad camp, but this was a guy that I hyped up as making some serious strides season to season, and this is backup tight end Zach Gentry. I mean, I talked about how he came in. He's a great blocker, and he's continued to be, good in the run game all throughout training camp. But I had commended him for the improvements he made as a receiver, the improvement he made with his hands, and it just hasn't been there consistently in this training camp. Dropping passes, dropping throws in the red zone that could be touchdown in team drills. And that's disappointing because outside of him, there's really no other clear-cut second option behind Pat Fryermuth if he were to go down. And we've seen Fryermuth miss some time due to some slight injury ailments. So to see Zach Gentry almost regress a little bit in the passing game is something that's a little disappointing to me. But again, he's still getting after it in the block game. He's still great in the run, creating lanes, creating holes for running backs. So I'm not panicking on him. He still had a solid camp, but not exactly ideal what I'd want to see from the guy who's really the clear-cut tight end 2 for the Steelers.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's definitely not the most encouraging thing, but it's. I mean, then again, it's like it's training camp, so like it doesn't necessarily translate like how poorly you do, or like how if you struggle or like inconsistent. It doesn't necessarily translate that way into the regular season.
It doesn't fully translate, but still having bad hands and having a lot of drops is something that at this point, where I think this is his 3rd or 4th season now, he's still having these problems. I mean, he's never really going to be more than just a pure blocking tight end, which is fine. You need that, but it concerns me when they don't really have another vertical threat at tight end,
right?
Who's going to be on the roster outside of Fryermuth if he were to go down. Last year they had Ebron, and it was a nice compliment with Ebron and Gentry behind Fryermuth because you kind of had the best of both worlds. Now it's all kind of on Gentry, and I was really hoping he'd kind of ascend up there. But again, I'm not panicking. You never know. It could be something that he had a little case of the drops, and he goes into the preseason, and everything is fine, and he's looking good. But just something I've kept my eye on, and it's been a little disappointing.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. What are your thoughts on Devin Bush?
Yeah, that's like I really liked the pick when the Steelers made it back a couple seasons ago. So I mean, this is a proven year for him, basically proven season.
100%, and it's been a struggle through camp so far.
Yeah, it's not encouraging at all, especially from someone who showed so much promise as a rookie, and then of course the injury just still seems to plague him. It is concerning. Like he's not back to like the way he was playing as a rookie. So I don't know. That's definitely something worth like keeping an eye on, especially if Spillane is gonna might be taking over as a starter, like taking in that other inside linebacker position. I just I kind of feel for him. I kind of feel bad. It's just I'm sure he's done all the proper things, recover and all that stuff. It's just sort of, I don't know.
I don't know if I can feel bad for him though, because he's having these opportunities to improve. I mean, if it's purely the injury that completely threw him off the rails, that's really unfortunate. I do feel for him in that aspect, but the fact that Robert Spillane is just flat out playing better than him, I mean, I don't feel bad for that. I mean, the Steelers traded up in the draft to get you to be that future, that inside linebacker of the future for them on the defense. And I mean, it's to the point now where if Robert Spillane is starting over him in the regular season and Devin Bush is on the bench, I'm going to be extremely disappointed because I had a really high hopes for him after his rookie season.
Right. That makes sense.
Unfortunate.
I mean, do you think he'll get back to that? I don't know,
man. I don't know. It's too early for me to say, and it's going to be tough for me to judge it off of because I'm not there watching training camp. This is just the stuff that I'm kind of observing from clips and what I'm reading and everything like that. But it's going to be one of those things where once they announce who that second starter is at inside linebacker, that's when I'm really going to be able to give more of a. And I guess I want to see in preseason what the disparity is too between him and Spillane and how they're divvying up the snaps and how both guys are looking, I guess. So we will see. That's something that's definitely I'm continuing to monitor that very closely.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, how about you? What are your Eagles' disappointments so far, player wise, at training camp?
Okay, so I have a few. Um, some players have just been very underwhelming, hence the disappointment part. But Gardner Minshew is actually my first one because,
More, okay,
like,
gotcha, gotcha.
he's yes, he's gonna be the backup, but it's just like when he's had so many like bad practices, just for like I've been reading all this stuff, he's just been like very poor compared to like last season, and then like just I don't know. As a backup, it's not the most encouraging when all you see is like him not doing well, not performing well in training camp, throwing interceptions. Like he's had, I can count my fingers on one hand, like two good practices from what I can recall. I have all the other ones, so that's not the most encouraging. Again, it's just training camp, but it definitely does matter to some extent, and we'll see if that uh, translate in going into this game
You
today.
know what's interesting too, real quick before you go on to your next disappointment, real
Yeah,
quick. It's so funny because the training camp that Mason Rudolph has had, where I don't think he's thrown an interception yet, very steady, handling the ball. That's exactly what you want out of your backup quarterback,
yeah,
and like that's what you want from Gardner Minshew, and he just hasn't been able to do that yet. Which I don't know. I just put that together in my head, but
yeah.
anyway,
No,
I'll let
exactly.
you.
Like just at least be like sort of like game manager. I don't know. Just keep the
Yeah,
ball like
game
out.
manager. Handle the ball, don't turn it over, and
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
like you
And
said, two good practices he's had is not what you want to see from your
yeah,
backup.
it's really not. My other one. Well, I have two more, but my other one is safety. Kayvon Wallace, former
Yeah,
fourth round. We sort of touched on it when we talked about DBs. He's just had a very poor training camp. He's been like primarily a special teamer, and there were um, at least those from inside Eagles like camp stuff. Like they believed maybe he could take over as a starter um, when Rodney McLeod left for the Colts, but clearly has not been the case. He's been very poor, and when I believe it was Anthony Harris who went down with an injury, I like the first team reps that Kayvon Wallace took were not good. So
yeah. I mean,
that's
he's in rough shape, and I even read something yesterday that Reed Blankenship was getting reps over
yeah.
him with the first team, which it's like, I mean, that's rough. I mean, he's really going nowhere, and I mean, it wouldn't shock me if he was cut at this point, dude. It
Uh,
really
it,
wouldn't. I mean,
it
that
was
outlandish to say. I mean, they're probably going to find a better option further down on the depth chart at this point.
yeah,
I guess it depends. Again, it's still early. We're only halfway through training camp, but I mean, really, you're seeing no progression whatsoever from him. And I'm sure you're going to be able to find younger, hungrier guys who are who could potentially fill out the depth spots on that roster better.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not encouraging. I don't expect him to make the roster at this point. Then my last one, I'm going to go with cornerback Zach McPherson, another former first rounder, but he's going into his second year. Last season, he had a really strong training camp going into the regular season. He didn't really play all that much until some injuries, and he had to get inserted into the lineup. But this season or this training camp, he's been very inconsistent. And he could have easily taken uh, cornerback like position opposite of Darius Slay, but obviously James Bradbury is now there, and so there was always this thought from again within the training camp or the Eagles camp that McPherson would take that number two role. That hasn't happened and won't happen because James Bradbury's there, so not. I mean, yeah, he's a former fourth rounder, but he was very like he showed a lot of promise last year. It's just he's not really building off of that.
Absolutely, he's
So
one that you want to see. You definitely want to see him have a really good couple of preseason games
yeah, yeah,
to kind of alleviate some of those worries.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, he still has time to turn around. Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, I'm kind of hoping he like sticks to, like special teams and we don't really see him um, like playing too many snaps on defense. But if he does, we'll see how that goes. Yeah, now those are my three players for the biggest disappointment so far.
All right. Gotcha. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. So we'll move over to the surprises so far of training camp. And my first two ones are two guys I've kind of already touched on, so I won't spend too much time with them. But number one for the Steelers has to be George Pickens. I mean, you got this guy as a wide receiver in the draft. You expected him to come in and, maybe have a solid rookie season. This guy is looking like he really may be a diamond in the rough. And I have been, you got to be thrilled as a Steelers fan with what you're getting so far. And I'm just excited to see how it translates into game action. And, this is what I was talking about when I was saying everything with the Deontay Johnson contract extension is you don't have to sign him to a massive extension, because if Claypool ascends or one of these other young receivers ends up being the real deal who can be even more dynamic, I'm not going there yet. Deontay Johnson's clearly still a step above everybody else in the wide receiver room for the Steelers, but you never know how this guy is going to develop over the next year or two, and it's been very exciting to see him make so many flashy plays and just be such a rock, such a steady rock so early in his career through training camp. So thrilled to see him there. The other rookie that I'm excited about so far has been Jaylen Warren's been a nice surprise. Anthony McFarland has been extremely up and down. I had high hopes for him. Benny Snell obviously dealing with the injury, and we know kind of what he is at this point in his career. So to really see a guy in Jaylen Warren take advantage of every opportunity he's had, I'm excited to see him in the preseason if it can translate over. I mentioned that earlier. So he's another guy that's been a really nice surprise through training camp. So those are the two guys on offense I'm really excited about. And then one other one to add on defense, a little bit further down the depth chart. We've talked before when we were talking about the linebacker episode about how outside of Derek Watt, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, some of the depth spots there at outside linebacker are wide open for whoever wants to come and take one. Jannard Avery's looked good. Tuzar Skipper's looked all right. Derek Tuska's been a little but Delonte Scott, who was another guy that kind of came into camp, he's looked extremely, extremely good. He's put together a lot of good days, which is really what you look for with those guys further down the depth chart. And he's got a legitimate chance at being a depth piece and making the 53-man roster, given the way he's played through training camp so far. And if it can translate into the preseason, there's no reason that he can't be in there with Jannard Avery and Derek Tuska and Tuzar Skipper to compete for that other. I think Jannard Avery, he's had a good training camp. He's probably going to make the roster behind Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt. But Delonte Scott is another guy who I think could definitely make that other outside linebacker depth piece if he continues to perform better than Tuzar, Skipper, and Tuska in preseason games. So those are my three surprises so far that I've been very excited about and hope to continue that. They all continue to play well.
I'm just curious about what was I say? I just blanked. Pickens.
Yeah.
Did you expect him to be performing this well in training?
No, I did not expect it to be this well. I mean, Mark Cabali, I read an article of his this morning that, he's a beat writer for the Steelers, and he said that Pickens is playing like the best rookie wide receiver this early he's ever seen. He said usually he sees guys come on a little later, but I mean, he's covered guys like Antonio Brown, obviously, who, Antonio Brown was a 6th-round pick, so it took him time to develop into the receiver he was. But I mean, the Steelers have continuously drafted these wide receivers early on. Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson. I mean, he makes it seem like George Pickens is ahead of where all these guys were at this stage of their rookie season. So I'm extremely excited with George Pickens to see what he can become and what he can continue to develop into.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to see what role he plays in the offense. And if he takes, like, how many snaps he takes away from maybe.
If he continues to play at this level, I definitely see him lining up outside with Deontay Johnson, those two guys lining up outside as the X and Z receivers. And Chase Claypool, it was pretty much not relegated to the slot because it's actually been proven that that's where he's most effective. But I can see Claypool not really lining up outside at all if George Pickens continues to play like this through the remainder of training camp and preseason. I think it could be that large of a role for him that early on, and that really excites me. I think it's a perfect fit for the offense, and the Steelers may have found a diamond in the second round.
That would be awesome for second round. Yeah, be contributing early, very early on. So.
All right. Any other? I don't know if there's any other Steelers you wanted to touch on that have been surprises, but other than that, I'll turn it over to you.
No, I think you got the best ones. But I guess for the Eagles, the first one I'll say is wide receiver Britton Covey. I think it's actually undrafted free agent. Utah, three-time All Pac-12 first team, and has been getting. I mean, he's been looking very good as a punt returner. Hopefully overtakes Jalen Reagor in that role. I don't want to see Reagor there, but that's definitely encouraging. And also some of the clips I've seen of him, like of Toby's route running, has been very clean, very crisp. It almost reminds me of Devontae Smith a little bit, in the sense that very young and like very like polished as a route runners already. And considering he's an undrafted free agent too, is like, wow, that's pretty cool too. He's been getting reps with the first team offense. So I mean, he has a genuine shot of making the roster.
He's gonna. I think he's flat out gonna make the roster. The
I
way
hope
that
he.
Sirianni seemed to talk about him, and the way that the Eagles seem to like him, and what he brings to the wide receiver room, and the fact that he can also return kicks, and that's somewhere that the Eagles have struggled a little bit in the past. I think he's got a spot on this roster, and I mean, I think the Eagles can then look to trade Rieger before, if he has a good preseason. That's a guy that I think the Eagles look to kind of trade out of there. Maybe you get a late round pick for him, because I think that kind of makes Rieger indispensable at that point. I mean, it's like you have your big three. You also have Zach Pascal, who's looked good since he got healthy. And then if Britton McCovey can be there too, I mean, you don't really have a need for Rieger to be on the roster anymore. And if you can get a pick for him, I think they do that. But I think unless Covey struggles really mightily in the preseason games, I think he's got a roster spot.
Yeah, I could absolutely. He should make the team. I think he will. I mean, preseason, yeah, will be a very good measuring stick, as I've been referring to all those episodes, to see where he's at, I guess, and it could translate to the preseason game. So I'm definitely gonna keep my eyes on him. Then my second one, well, my next two are veterans actually.
Okay.
So this other one, they're both on defense. James Bradbury is the first of the
Absolutely.
um, he had sort of a down year, even though he had 4 interceptions last season with the Giants. But he's been, according to like a lot of sources, the best corner in training camp, better than Darius Slay, which is like, I think that's awesome. I mean, like,
It's super promising. Absolutely.
yeah, like that, and I'm sort of like bigger picture, like that gives the Eagles like a really good like trio of corners. Devontae Maddox there in the slot, and then Darius Slay as your number one, basically. I mean, that's really encouraging, and it's also been interesting reading it, like that that Bradbury has been competing like very well. Like he has been getting beaten like too often by AJ Brown, as opposed to Darius Slay, who's kind of struggled with like the high pointing balls, and like because AJ Brown's just such a big bodied receiver, and it's like James Bradbury seems to match up the best against AJ Brown so far in training camp. So that's definitely very encouraging. Seems like kind of a really good, like sneaky good signing so far in training camp. So I hope that holds up and goes goes into the regular season. But this other one I think is might surprise you. So I have Brandon Graham as my number 3.
Okay. No, I actually like that.
So yeah, he's obviously coming off the Achilles injury, and he's 34 years old, right? So you think, okay, so he might be more of a rotational guy this year, maybe not as many snaps as maybe in like other seasons before he got injured, but apparently he's been real like blowing up plays, like being very disruptive in training camp. Been playing really well, and Fletcher Cox even said like he looks better like than before he got injured. Like like that to me is like, wow, that's really encouraging. Especially because he's 34. He's past his prime at this point, and interestingly enough, has not gotten a single season where he's had at least 10 sacks or double-digit sacks. And one of the Eagles beat writers like, this could be the season he does it. Coming off the Achilles injury,
That's incredible.
What? Like, yeah, like I would have never expected that, especially when you have other players like Hassan Reddick, Derek Barnett, and some other So it's like, so what's
it's promising. It's really promising to see how well he's played so soon after the Achilles injury, and just getting back into not even game action, but just competitive football again, like at training camp. And so quickly he's been able to kind of regain form. It's extremely promising, even if he is just in more of a depth role this year.
Yeah, no, that's awesome to see, awesome to hear, and hopefully that also continues going into the regular season. Well, I'm really interested to see how many snaps he gets going into like week 1, and like if he'll be like have limited snaps or something like that, and let other players maybe play more. But yeah, that's awesome.
Well, I got to say one other thing when it comes to Eagles surprises. Obviously both the rookies in Jordan Davis and Cam Jurgens have both shown some really good flashes at times. I just want to make reference to that. But one guy I'm surprised you didn't say was AJ Brown, dude. It sounds like he's been forming such a great connection with Jalen Hurts. This guy, in my mind, fits Philly like a glove. What's your reason for not giving him a surprise?
Because it's what I expected. I expect him to be
Okay, that's fair.
I don't know, with the other players, it's like okay, like I was expecting.
It's more of a surprise.
Yeah, it's genuinely like more of a surprise. AJ Brown was like, yeah, obviously this is exactly what I saw. The big body receiver who's like is so good. Like
this guy is gonna fit in Philly so perfectly. I loved what he said the other day when the Eagles had the live practice at Lincoln Financial Field in front of the crowd and everything, and he said. Someone asked him, "You have a rule that you don't dive in games," and he said, and he dove in that practice, or he doesn't dive in practices. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And he dove in that practice, and someone asked him about that, and he said, "I don't know. I was out there, and it just felt like a game atmosphere." I mean, that's awesome, and I'm sure that the Philly fans love to hear that. This dude is going to excel in Philadelphia so much. I'm an outsider. I'm not like a fan of the Eagles or anything, but I think that this dude is going to fit into Philly so perfectly. And I honestly don't think it's outlandish to say he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL this season. I think it's going to be that good of a year for him.
I could see it. I mean, again, it just kind of depends on Jalen Hurts and whether or not he can continue to progress or not, really. But yeah, it's for anyone. He's going to be a threat for whoever plays, even if Hurts goes.
One other aspect, because we talked about how much Kayvon Wallace has struggled, but on the flip side, Marcus Epps has supposedly looked extremely well in training camp. I don't know if it's really a surprise, but definitely I think better than I expected. And I actually read an article by Bo Wolf, who writes for The Athletic this morning, and he said that Epps has basically taken over the top safety spot, even performing better than Anthony Harris. So that's got to be pretty promising for you, am I right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I didn't put him in because like the other safeties have been a bit underwhelming. So I just relative or compared to the other ones, I think he absolutely has been doing the best. I just didn't know if it was enough necessarily to put him in my biggest surprise. Yeah, I can see why, but yeah,
It's so great that he has been playing well though, because otherwise things would be a little questionable in that safety room right now.
Yeah, that other position is a bit questionable too, but
yeah. All right, sounds good, man. You got any other final thoughts before we wrap things up here?
I don't know if you wanted to talk about the Antonio tweet. Yeah, because that was a really interesting tweet. So I want to hear what you have to say about it.
Dude, it honestly left me like I was sitting there and I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm actually reading this. And he is the guy has completely embraced how unprofessional he's viewed. He's completely embraced that everybody sees him as a clown. And by going out and saying everything that he did, if you haven't read his full kind of statement, just search up Antonio Brown on Twitter and the whole statement will come up. It's maybe like 4 or 5 sentences. I highly encourage everyone to do that. But he basically talks about all these completely unprofessional, reckless things he's done in his NFL career. And how his biggest regret is that he can't watch himself play live. And it is just such a clown move to me to say. And just a guy who is trying to stay relevant and kind of act like I'm above everything else. I've had this incredible career where, he's done all these incredible things. One of the greatest wide receivers of all time, honestly. And he's just kind of saying like, screw everybody. I am who I am. And I don't know. I have no respect for the guy. That's what it ultimately comes down to for me. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. I mean, yeah, I do agree. It's kind of more of like, I'm trying to be relevant, sort of kind of thing. But I don't know if he was trying to acknowledge himself as like, or like acknowledge the things he did. Like, I don't know.
I'm curious the setting. Like, was someone asked when he was like, yeah, and my biggest regret isn't that I was clowning the Raiders organization or that I burned my foot in a hot air balloon accident or whatever happened there, or when you know what I'm talking about. But to me, it's like I don't know. It was in bad taste. Didn't need to be said. And again, I think it just shows his lack of professionalism,
his lack of touch with reality as well. But that's
absolutely.
I don't know. Very questionable. Yeah,
he provides us with more content even as his NFL career is over. So
yes, thank you. Thank you for the former Steelers for giving us content to work with.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, man. Any other final thoughts you want to just bring up briefly, or anything you want to touch on?
Go Birds. Go against the
Yeah,
Jets.
first game tonight, 7:30, Lincoln Financial Field. So
Yes, sir.
Eagles will be playing the Eagles are playing the Jets, right? Eagles are
Yeah,
playing the
yeah.
Jets. Steelers are playing the Seahawks tomorrow. So I don't know. We will get some preseason football. To what degree of quality it is, that's always up for debate and discussion. But we will be back again next week talking more Steelers and Eagles. As always, it's been a blast, man. And thank you everybody for tuning in. See you next time.